Hello, welcome to TechEd Lab. Today we will going to learn how to create a logic app connector which will going to help us to insert the data into SQL database. To start with this, first I have created an SQL database on Azure SQL subscription, and the database structure is very simple. We will going to use a student we will going to use to capture the student information in this database. The table schema is very simple. We will going to you enroll the student with the very basic information, with starting with his roll number, name, date of birth, gender, and registration date and time. And all of this information we will going to insert into SQL by creating a logic app API. So I have already created a simple database with this small table. Let me save this table. And as the database and the table is saved now, let's get back to Azure and let's try to search for logic app service. Here we will going to create a fresh logic app connector. So create a logic app. We are going to use the service as the resource group which is already defined as a system. If it is not defined, we can define a new resource group. Okay, the name of the connector is insert student info SQL. Okay, and we are going to create this connector. As the connector is in progress of deployment, we're going to wait. Yeah, now the connector is ready, so we're going to click on go to resource. Now here we will going to create a simple post request in which we will going to push the student information in a JSON format through, and it will later on will be saved into the SQL database. For that we have to use the HTTP request receive connector. Here we need to define the JSON schema. So let's define the schema, simple schema. We can write down like by the same name of our field even. Okay. First name, last name, date of birth, gender, and the registration date and time. We will going to set up the data insert date time. We're going to copy this SQL schema. We were going to copy the JSON schema and cut it from there, and we will going to insert it in the JSON payload sample form. So once we will going to insert it into payload sample generate schema form, it will going to generate the data type along with those attribute names. So now our schema is ready. Let's select the method. So we will going to use the post method. Okay, we'll have an option to pass the parameterized data also. For that we have to select a relative path. We will going to see this in the later sessions, but now we will going to just simply use a post request, and after selecting the method we will going to call the connector, SQL connector, to connect to our database which we have recently created. So let me search for SQL. Okay, let's select this. We have many functions available, or many actions available to in SQL connector. For now we will going to use the insert row function. We will going to use SQL authentication. Let me enter the name of the database. Okay, we don't have any on-prem gateway installed, so we will going to keep this option as is. Our subscription is the trial subscription, so we will not going to select any subscription here. And after entering all the credentials of the database, we will going to click on create. This will going to create the connection string which we can which will be reusable with any of the next SQL connector we will going to use within our subscription. We have to wait for it to build the connection. I'm getting an error. Okay, I think I'm having some issue with my database firewall. Let me okay, let's try to do. So our connection string is now ready. Now in this insert row action, we will going to first select our connection string. Once we select our connection string, it will going to show us all the available databases within that connection. So we're going to select our database, and after selecting the database, it will going to load the available tables within that database. So let's wait for it. So it will going to load. and we have our student table now appearing here. So as we were going to select student table, the next option it will going to prompt us is to select the field which we want to use to insert the information. So here we will going to insert, we are going to select all the fields, and this is how it have exposed all the fields which we can map with our HTTP request payload field or attribute. So the roll number I'm going to map with the above roll number property, which is the JSON property, the first name, the last name, date of birth, gender, and registration date time. We will going to use the expression, and here we will going to use the current date time function. Let's go scroll down to math and date time function. We're going to select UTC now. Same we were going to use in time. After doing this, once the data is inserted, or it may happen that the data while inserting can get failed, maybe due to duplicate record or any other constraints which we have applied on the table. So we need to do some kind of a try catch handling here. Try catch handling is very much easy. So we will going to send a response back after inserting the database, after inserting the data into the database. For that, we need to insert a connector which is called the response connector. Okay, and here we can set 200 as a status code success if we have the data inserted successfully. We can write our custom JSON body or response just to notify to the user. So we can write status colon success, and we can also return the inserted data into the response back. Until now, if we can see here, we don't know what is the post URL which we will going to use. So after doing this, we are going to save our connector, which will going to generate a URL. So now to access this, or to access this logic app connector, let's go to Postman. I'm going to copy this URL. The method which we have selected is post. The URL is this. Let's go into header. The content type is application slash JSON, and the body is JSON format. So raw JSON, and I'm going to copy the schema, and we're going to remove all the additional attributes like this. The roll number I'm going to use are 1001, and the name will be tech. Last name will be ed. The date of birth is 01 10 2019. Not forget to put the commas at the end of each attribute. The gender is male, and that is our schema. So after doing this, we will going to send and see how the response will come back. Will it be success or fail? So let's try this. Okay, that's great. So our data is inserted. If you can see here, the status came as success, and these are the values which I have written back as the data which was inserted into the database. If you can see here, the student ID is an incremental value, so it is returned as 1 to me. If I'm going to open the SQL database, and let's go to access the table, and try to see how the data looks in the table itself. So this is how the data is looking into the table. Now let's go back to our logic app to see how the flow looks like when it receives a request. So let's refresh and see. Yeah, so we have received one request which took around 4.18 seconds, and let's click on this to see the data flow. Okay, so we have received this payload, and once logic have received the hit, it directly inserted into our database in this format, and this is how the output came after inserting the data. And this is the response of it. Okay, and the response which we have returned. Now we can have a scenario where we can say that if the data is not inserted, so we should return, or we should do try catch handling in that scenario. So to simulate such scenario, what we will going to use, we will going to open our same database, and we will going to make student and roll number as a primary key and save it. Now if we will going to use the same roll number to insert into the database, it should prompt us some error. So let's go back to Postman, and I'm not going to change anything here, and I'm just trying to push the same information again into the database. Oh, I have done a mistake here because the student column is already incremental, so we will not get the same combination every time. So what I'm going to do here, that I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to make this roll number as a primary key, and I'm going to save it again. Yeah, I think now we have some duplicates into the database which we need to remove, because we have already inserted some duplicate data in the last attempt. Let me remove the last record which we have inserted, and we're going to save this table again. And now it's saved. Let's go back to the Postman and try to send the information. Now if you can see here, we didn't receive any response. However, we have received some anonymous message which is very vague for a developer to understand, or the end user to understand this. So what we will going to do here now, first of all, we will going to refresh it and see how it looks like in the logic app. So we can see here the request is failed. Okay, and the reason of failure, let's go inside and see the reason of the failure. The reason of the failure is while inserting the row. Let's see the message, and the message is very much clear that it's a violation of a primary key, and system cannot insert a duplicate because we already have this roll number available. Now for the end user, we need to give him some proper message so he can understand while manipulating or utilizing the API. So what we will going to use, we will going to use one more response object. Okay, and for this response object, we will going to create a parallel batch under the insert row. So on the left side we have the success response which we have received when we have attempted it for the first time, and in the right side we will going to give it some code, and we will going to set the status as fail. And now we need to tell to the workflow that which response we need to show at which action. So we have to click on the success one first. We can see the menu option with three dots, and there is an option here called configure run after. We are going to select is successful and done, and then we will going to do the same for the failure action, but here we will going to uncheck is successful and we will going to select has failed. Okay, and press OK. So now if you can see here, there is a bit difference. It will going to show you on a flow. So this arrow is a normal workflow arrow which we're going to execute at the time of success. If we have any failure, then this message will be thrown out as a response. So we're going to save this, and now it is saved. So we're going to go back to our postman and try to send the same data. Now we are getting a different and a bit meaningful response. The status is fail here, and the error code is 400, which we have already set, and the error is 400 bad request, and this 400 is coming while inserting the data to the database, and this is the same message which we were seeing in logic app, which is saying that cannot insert a duplicate value. Okay, so this way we can have a try catch handling for any statement which is where we need to do, especially while dealing with any database operation like insertion or updation. So this is all for today. We will going to come back with our next session to see how we can use the select connectors for an SQL database, and how we can use the filters and the relative path while using the HTTP request. Thank you now. Bye bye. Have a nice day.